There we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the panel. We've got a big house. We have got a full house, like proper busy, full house. We're bringing somebody else in. We're bringing more people in. Look at us all there. So I am going to go round the room and we're just saying that. So I'm going to put on my thick glasses because I can't read anything at all. So, so we were saying that we don't have people's names on, which we normally do, and I don't know why. So if you are listening and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is how you can put on multiple people's names, let us know. But most importantly, I want to welcome some incredible people who have agreed to join us for this really powerful and yet very sensitive conversation. Ladies, feel free to have a look at your links as well. Feel free to share if you can in your groups if you haven't done so already. If you're struggling and it's taking you longer, don't worry and stuff. I have got your back. This is live. This is a live show. So first and foremost, we are going to be talking about, and Naomi Holbrook has just given us this title because she says she's just heard it, and it's called Carenting. If you are looking after your parents, especially in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, we want to hear from you because a lot of us are either in business or we have jobs and we have a lot of responsibility for our parents, whether we are looking after them in jobs, whether we are looking after them in, hi EJ, even if we're looking after them financially or just making sure that they get the medications they need. It is not an easy job. I know that for sure. So I wanted to really bring this to the forefront because I believe that there's a lot of people who are struggling in silence. But first and foremost, I want to introduce the incredible Claire Waldron. Hello, Claire.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Claire. Do you want to just give us a minute of what you do? Tell us what you do.
Okay. So I'm based in southern Spain. I've lived here 19 years with my family, and I'm an online coach helping anxious horsewomen and empower them to be able to be and train with their own horses. So I take them out of the sticky situations when they feel like they're not good enough, they feel like they should sell their horse or they should send it away for training. They are good enough to do this stuff. And we use positive reinforcement methods as well. So it's all super ethical and it's all about connection and calmness and having clarity with your horse. And so that's what I do.
Very interesting. Sunny, is it sunny at the moment? Not that.
That's why it's a little bit dark in there because we live in the dark in the day, and then we open up the shutters at night to let the cooler air in. Yeah, it's getting a bit because it's southern Andalusia I live in, so it's near Granada.
Nice.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Stunning. Well, it's lovely to have you on board. And Thanks. Next, I'm going to go to Chanel, another person who's not in the UK. Hi, Chanel.
Hi, and I'm also a horse rider. Haven't ridden in a while, but I also used to ride. I used to do eventing in the UK. So we lived in the UK for 12 years, and then we went to the Turks and Caicos Islands in the Caribbean for 2.5 years. And now we're back in South Africa, where I grew up. And my mom is based here, who I am helping to take care of. So what I do now is fractional COO work. So I come into businesses and I help them with their marketing and their launches, building their teams, building out their systems and all of that kind of thing for launches, online businesses, certification programs and that kind of thing.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for coming on board. It's been brilliant. So finally, a newbie, Naomi Holbrook. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So I'm Naomi Holbrook, also known as the Unconventional Weight Loss Coach, and I help women to heal their relationship with food, their bodies, and themselves. And that is all through science-backed, compassion-free, and shame-free coaching. So what we're talking about today is right up my street, not just personally, but so many of the women that come to work with me are in what we know as the sandwich generation. They've got aging parents that they're looking after. They've also probably got teenage children or maybe even younger. also navigating the wonders of menopause, and quite often what is their suffering. So it's about helping them with strategies, not just with nutrition, not just with their health, but with resilience, confidence, boundary setting, all of those wonderful things.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And I know how much amazing work you've been doing, and congratulations on it all. So, yay, you're here. And we've got EJ and we've got Rochelle. I'm not even going to bother introducing you to them because they're here every week. And can I just say this before we start? We have been doing this by 1 week. We have been doing this every day for over 6 months. And it is just incredible. And we've been spotted. We'll tell you more about that later. We have been spotted, guys. So consistency pays off. Right, let's talk about looking after parents. So this came on because I was talking to Naomi, and I can't remember what event we're in. And you know, I love her dad. Like, I've never met him, but he's just the most gorgeous soul. And I call him Silver Fox. I think he's absolutely gorgeous. I believe one day I will marry that man and stuff. He doesn't know it yet. And
that's another thing for me to arrange.
I know. Just one more thing. Get your skates on. But we're talking, and I said, do you know what? I've been thinking about this for a while. As someone who looks after her parents and looked after my dad until his death, I was like, do you know what? I really want to bring this to the forefront. And I know I've had conversations with Rochelle about her family as well. So I am going to start with Chanel. Chanel, you tell me, why is this a great space for you to talk about this? And, you know, who are you looking after?
So it's actually my mom, and it happened quite quickly. So she's only 67. So she's pretty young, and she's got stage 7 dementia already. So she can't remember my name, you know, so it's quite tricky. And I have a daughter who's 12. And sometimes she will acknowledge us, and sometimes she'll just be reading a book and be like in a total zone. So it's quite hard for my daughter, I think, as well, not having that connection with her granny. And the fact that, you know, 2.5 years ago, she was still driving. She was fine. So it's what happened with my mom, the neurologist has said, would normally take 15 to 20 years if it was Alzheimer's dementia. And this has happened in like 2 years. So it's been quite a very rapid decline. And yeah, basically I brought her to come and stay a bit closer to us because she was quite far away. You know, South Africa is quite big. So it's, you know, a 12-hour drive it used to be. So she's nearer to us. She was living with us for 5 months in the house with us. I ended up needing to get a carer in because I am working and we've got school, and she can't be left alone for 5 minutes. So you can't even go and hang up the washing or do anything. So it's very full on because you just don't know what she might do something to, you know, harm herself or break something or whatever. So we had a carer come in, and then recently I actually found somebody here who's a nurse who rents houses. So she's got 6 houses right near where we live, and they have carers in there 24/7. And so she is in there now after spending 6 months with us, but I can pick her up anytime. I can go check on her anytime. So it's not like an institution. It's more run like almost like a family home, but you know that there's people there 24/7 and she's taken care of. So that's kind of where we're at now.
And how does that affect you? Like, what's the impact of that on your family?
It was quite hard for me to make that decision because she was living with us and it was going pretty well, but we couldn't. When you have private care, it's way more expensive to have someone 24/7, and then you have to also have people on rotation. So you can't have one carer working 24/7. So then you'd end up having maybe 3 carers on different rotation, and then your house gets very full. It's difficult to do anything. Like, even if you have a carer, you can't go away. You can't go out for dinner. You can't really do anything after the carer's gone home. So that was, for me, a very difficult decision. When I dropped my mom off initially, I was in tears. My mom was fine. She's like, oh, got my book, got my recliner. Okay, see you. So it was so funny. Like, she was totally unfazed. She didn't even know she was being moved. So she didn't even ask me why we were in another house. She didn't know at all. So I guess she's just living in the moment, which, yeah, so for her, she was pretty unfazed. But for me, it was harder, because I had to let go a little bit there with the caring and her being with us.
Bless you. I can even just listening to you, I can feel how difficult that is, just almost like reliving that. And, my heart goes out to you. Naomi, do you want to tell us your story? I'm just going to come off for one moment, but I'm listening. Just tell us your story whilst I just sort something out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Silver Fox, as he is known, will be turning 92 in August, my dad, and has recently been diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's. Not a huge surprise, if I'm honest. I really noticed sort of pandemic with all the lockdowns. My mum passed away when I was a teenager. My dad's been on his own for a few years and certainly lived alone since losing my mum. And I just noticed that loneliness creeping in and the change in, I guess, cognitive kind of function and the amount of times that I was repeating things, checking on different things. And I guess I did that thing that so many people put off, was actually start to have some really uncomfortable conversations. My dad was living in North Devon. I live in East Sussex. It's about it can be a 5 to 6 hour drive to get there. And what I could see happening was, as things started to shift and change, I am the default daughter, the go-to. I could see that was going to become more and more of my life. And I had a really honest conversation with my dad. I run my own business. And I said, at some point, you are going to need more support and help. And if you stay in Devon, that's fine. But what you need to appreciate is that I am not in a position to come down here at a phone call with an emergency during the week, at the week. I can't just be here in like 2 seconds. So I started to sow that seed probably about, 4 years ago. And he was adamant, no, I'm never leaving Devon, been there 50 years. And then eventually, just over 2 years ago, he literally turned around to me and said, I think I'm ready now. I sold his house within 9 days. I found him a fabulous apartment. My dad is physically fit and active at 92, quite incredible. Still goes to the gym twice a week, goes out for a walk every day, goes out for coffee. However, it's the emotional load and support. And I think this is something that nobody prepares you for, is the regret and guilt they start to have in later life as they face their own mortality. Maybe the need to try and, make up for some things, to make peace with some things. And so that for me is a huge thing. It's not that he needs physical care. It is more that he needs the emotional support. And also, I have had some guilt around the fact that I've moved him from 50 years of friends around. And whilst all of his friends of his own age group had passed away, he still had friends down there. And I've brought him to an area where he knew nobody other than me, which puts a huge amount of pressure on me to be the go-to for emotional support, for all those different things. He's been here now it'll be 2 years in September. I resonate with, 5 months. I had my dad live with me for 2 years. And he thinks that running a business is me just available to sit around, have coffee, chat, go out for coffee, go out for lunch. So one thing that has really come from this is boundaries. But yes, like I said, the diagnosis is recent. We're actually just going through the process now, hoping to actually get him on medication, which whilst it won't cure the dementia and Alzheimer's, we're hopeful that it might slow things down a little bit. But I also lost my late aunt to dementia and Alzheimer's, so I'm very aware and conscious of what this journey is most likely going to be and look like.
I remember when you had to move him. I remember the guilt that you felt and stuff. Like, I think that's when I first got introduced virtually to the Silver Fox, and I know how difficult that was. So I'm gonna sort of like just dip in, Rochelle. Your mom is still thriving, but
Yes.
you've got a very different outlook on this, haven't you?
Yeah, so my mum, I'd say she's perfectly healthy. She's got gallstones and she's having a gallbladder out in a few weeks. So she's not at peak fitness at the moment. But mine comes from not a illness point of view, but from a business point of view. So in my business, I employ my mum and my sister, and my partner has his own joinery business, but he also primarily works for my business. And my dad at one point was working for me as well. So mine comes from a different sort of pressure where I am essentially, if I don't bring in money to my business, I cannot pay my family. So that's a huge weight on my shoulders. And I know, like, me and my mum have had numerous discussions about it, because I often I feel guilt that I can't pay them more. She feels guilt that she's putting this pressure on me. So but at the same time, I actually love the fact that that is an option. So for my mum, she was a social worker, and she had me young. She was 18 when she had me, and then now she's got my 12-year-old sister who started secondary school in September, and she's had a difficult start to secondary school, and she kind of needs to be on call quite often to the school for my sister. So that means that she couldn't work a stereotypical job anymore, and that the only option for me was to take her on board with me and say, right, well, we'll find work for you to do, and then that she's got the flexibility that I can give her as an employer. So I'm hoping that I don't have to go through anything like what some of the stories that Naomi and Chanel have shared. But yeah, it's just looking at a different angle of, like, not taking care of your parents, because she is doing the work to earn a wage, but there's still that stress and responsibility on my shoulders.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Claire, do you want to give us your scenario?
Yeah, so we moved out to Spain 19 years ago. My parents were already here. They'd retired out here, and we sort of fell in love with the area as well. So we lived just down the road from them, and I'm an only child, and so there was always been a lot anyway, and I was always doing the doctor's appointments and the hospital appointments because Mum had quite very severe arthritis, and there was always something. So I was supporting them a lot with that and going to the appointments, because Mum was also partially deaf, and she did learn Spanish, but as she's got older, it became difficult to keep up with the Spanish. And also, when you're in pain, you do revert back to your first language. You just do. So I did a lot of the interpreting for her and everything. And then it got to the stage. So it would be last year. So it would be just a couple of years ago, we started to have conversations about maybe they should move in with us, because Mum's arthritis was getting quite bad for her mobility. She needed a wheelchair to go out shopping, and she was just looking really frail, and my dad wasn't coping very well either. He's not the strongest of people emotionally, so looking after Mom was a big of a perfect storm, emotional storm, if you like. And so they moved in with us last February, which was amazing. So they each had their bedrooms, and we've got a disabled bathroom all set up in our house. And Mum died last August, really suddenly. She's got a few things going on, and we had no idea that she'd got a heart problem, and we had no idea about it. And I took her to A&E one day because she got a bit of pain in her ribs, and we thought it was to do with her arthritis and her spine collapsing and everything. And as it turned out, she collapsed at the hospital with heart failure and died at the hospital just there and then. And that was last August. And it was the biggest shock, because I was there with her doing the interpreting and everything, and they just whisked her away from me when she collapsed. And the next thing they're coming to say, she's got this, this huge heart problem, there's nothing we can do. And then it just escalated from there. So I drove to the hospital with my mom in the car, and I came home, when they give you a paper bag with their clothes in, and that's what I brought home. And my dad was here, my daughter was here, my husband was here, and we were just what just happened, you know, just not expected at all. So now I've got dad here at home, which is great because we sold their house, and he's not coped well with it at all. He hasn't slept very well in a long time. And so he became quite reliant on alcohol for sleep. And then, was it 3 weeks ago, he ended up in hospital with pancreatitis due to alcohol consumption. So now he's on really strong sleeping tablets. His eating's not very good, even though, you know, I make him food and stuff. So again, he's very self-sufficient. He still drives. He can do things, but it's the emotional part. I am the go-to. You know, it's every email. It's every should I do this? Every decision. And so I think it's like Naomi was, you know, it's that emotional part that's really difficult. My husband's amazing. And it's really hard on my daughter too, because she's 16. She's just going through her GCSEs, studying at home. So it's hard for her to see her granddad, you know, like this. So that's where we are at the moment. It's,
I don't know how anybody's doing it, because, you know, like I say, everybody's either got a job or they've got a business, and you have to do all of this on top of making sure that the parent is okay, or that the parent doesn't have a tap and everything else, and it's just heartbreaking. EJ, your parents are quite young, aren't they?
Yeah, I suppose relatively. My mom is 67. My dad is 71. My dad has stage 4 prostate cancer. I suppose my situation is that I don't even live in the same country or continent as my parents. And in our culture, as the first child and first daughter, like all of you, I'm the go-to person. So for me, it's creating an entire network now in Nigeria of people that I can check with. So my parents are sort of Facebook daily. I see them, you know, webcam face chats every day, several times a day. I know everything that's going on. I know where, you know, whether medication is running out, because they both got, which is very typical with West African parents, the high blood pressure. You cannot miss the medication. And there's the whole thing about worrying about the standard of healthcare over there in Nigeria. There's the thing about, you know, if like not so long ago, my dad fell, and quite badly actually, but luckily he got away with a sprained ankle nearly a year ago, but we're still dealing with that. And there's the whole thing of, well, take medication. Oh no, I'm going to call this person who's going to come and rub some herbs on it. No, take medication. You know, so trying to sort that out from another country is a bit tricky, you know. They're both retired now, and I suppose if you live somewhere if you live in Europe or like in the UK, you're able to have some kind of social life after you've retired. In Nigeria, it's very different. You're either at home or at church. So sort of again trying to help create a life that is keeping them busy, keeping their faculties busy. That's again, you know, another challenge. So for me, it's just the distance and dreading what we know is what will come with age, you know.
Yeah. So I could just make this really, really short and go what EJ said in my case. That's
Yeah.
and we're not related. So so my dad. So there's 6 of us, by the way, and siblings. So there's 6 of us, and I think we all play different roles in our family with my parents and stuff. So, you know, when my dad was alive, my dad had dementia for about 10 years, and you go through the phase of, again, in Africa, you don't want to be, you know, my mom was too embarrassed to tell people that my dad had dementia. It wasn't like now where it's like, okay, let's raise awareness of it. So like my dad would forget things and stuff, and again, bless the poor man and stuff. He didn't know whether he was coming or going, but it started very, very gradually. You can't normally pick it up. But I remember being in a very senior role, and And then making sure again, like EJ says, you're on the phone with them every single day, multiple times a day. And it's not on the phone; it's on a WhatsApp video. And actually, like even this morning, I was talking to my mom. My mom's 80 now. My dad has since passed away, and my mom was getting anxious that she couldn't see me, and she's like, "Where are you? Where are you?" I'm here, and I'm like, and I'm getting almost frustrated at her. I'm like, I'm here. And I go, what did you do before you have video cameras and stuff? Like, you just pick up the phone and speak, right? And, I'll joke about it, but the truth of the matter is that responsibility is there. Rarely do I go to bed without ringing my mum. I did that last night, but she had rang me and left a message and stuff because it's that comfort. Now, I know that my other siblings provide other support as well, but I'm the person that will say to her, "Where's your medication? How much is left?" Because it will finish and she won't remember. And again, like what EJ says, it's like navigating Medicare in Medicare medical care in Cameroon or in Africa is very different than managing it here. Normally, if you know the doctor well, you can get prescriptions quickly. It's not as if you have like it's a whole different thing. And also like ambulances, it's not like here where you've got the NHS. You don't have the NHS, so if anything happens, you have to worry about a car, making sure that there's somebody to get there. And also you've got strangers looking after your parents as well. Like you almost have to create a village of people that you hope you can trust to look after your parents. So I think I deal with it by just putting it at the back of my mind. And I think because it's become such a routine now, it's not a thing. And if it is stressing me out, I don't think about it. But I want to know, because I think everybody's given their idea now. I'd love to get like a couple of minutes from everyone about the impact it has on your job and on your mental health. I'm going to go to Naomi now.
Okay. Well, I think huge. Thankfully, not my mental health, because I'm so grateful that my journey has taken me on a path of putting my physical, mental, and emotional health in the best place possible. If this had happened to me 5 years ago, I honestly don't believe I would be in the position I'm in right now. Thankfully, I'm really resilient. I'm able to put boundaries in place. I've got, my mental health is in a really, really positive place. But does it impact? Hugely. Like I said, I've done my own healing journey, and now what is happening with my dad is he's wanting to have a lot of conversations from 30 that should have happened 30 years ago when my mum passed away, when there was a huge amount of adolescent trauma, and those conversations he's now bringing to the forefront now. So are they having an impact? Absolutely. And there's something that I navigate and sort of work through. Business-wise, last year I was busy writing my first book. I actually ended up needing to postpone the date by 6 months because my dad was literally having a fall every week. He had a serious head injury. He had, we thought he broke his wrist he was literally falling all the time. And it was me rushing him, hospital appointments, checking. He got COVID. He got another really nasty virus. So of course things, it didn't impact my clients because I just kept everything like that going. But were there opportunities that I turned down? 100%. I had to put things on hold, do different things like that. So it definitely had an impact. But I think where I'm seeing it the most is my social life and friendships. Because there's been so many times that I've had something planned with a friend to go and stay for a weekend. Dad's got sick. I then had to cancel those plans, do that. So I think you can't do everything. So what ends up happening is you need to decide, I guess, that wheel of life, like what's important right now. So my business is still important. My health is vital. My dad's important. Has it meant that I've seen friends less, had less social time? Absolutely. But that's part and parcel of it. And I think, there's elements that we all need to figure out what works for us. And I don't think there is one size fits all. I have a lot of people say things to me like, you need to do all this now. You should be doing this with your dad. You shouldn't. And I'm like, this is my journey, it's his journey. We'll do it the way that it kind of works for us, because you know, I don't think other people can tell you what's a priority and what isn't a priority in your life.
100%, 100%. And that's what people don't see. People don't see the delays. People don't see the anguish. People don't see the friendships that come and go. People don't see all of that, you know. So thanks for sharing that. Chanel, how has that impacted you?
Yeah, so mine, it feels like it's quite recent and it all happened so quickly. So in October last year, I needed to take basically, well, almost a month off to go up and sort out, bring her down on an airplane, you know, all that kind of thing. So obviously when we have our own business, then, you know, especially if we're doing service-based stuff, then we're not getting paid if we're not working. So we're taking some time off. Thank goodness my clients are, you know, super supportive, understanding and everything like that. So they understood when I needed to do that. And I work, you know, remotely as well. So I work from home, so I can work at night, I can work in the morning, I can work whenever. So I think actually having our own business is a massive advantage, because then we're not clocking in and clocking out at certain hours. We can work until midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning when we need to. And then that's what I do. So I work when I'm in flow and I don't have any distractions or things that I need to deal with. So I think that's the way I've done it. I think I felt like it all happened really quickly and I was go. And then I sort of, it kind of caught up with me a little bit, because I think you're running on adrenaline. If it's something happens specifically, you know, my mom, I had to bring her on a wheelchair. Like I had to have an assisted flight. She couldn't walk. She could hardly talk. So she was really bad, but now she's walking, she can get up off a chair, she's eating on her own again. Like, so she's really improved quite a lot, which is great to see that. So she's reading, she reads out loud, she'll read the same book every day, but at least she's reading. So it's nice to see that. I think, you know, with the right nutrition is massive, and making sure they drink water, because they don't remember to drink the water even if it's there. Like you have to keep reminding them. So just little things like the nutrition, like a keto diet works really well for dementia as well, the good fats and all that. So it's been, you know, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole with that stuff as well, which is I think the thing that's most scary for me, and something that I have worked with a therapist in the past, because my dad had a heart attack running on the beach when he was 54, and we didn't know anything was wrong. And I was living in the UK at the time, and I got the phone call. I was 27 and he was 54, and he died suddenly. And so I think deep down, I have a bit of a fear of like an early death as well. And now my mom's got early onset dementia. So I think for me, that's the most anxiety, is like, is this going to happen to me? And then what about my daughter, and what about my husband? And you know, I run the business, my husband does video editing, like podcast editing and things like that for our clients. But yeah, essentially it's on me to bring in the clients, run the business and all of that. So and I'm an only child as well, so I definitely feel that. And I think, like, what happens if something happens to me? So yeah.
Wow. That's a lot. And you know what? And so again, that's another thing we've not touched on, is like, if your parents are getting dementia, does that mean you're going to get dementia? If your parents are ill, does that mean that you're going to get? It's really funny, actually. I woke up this morning and I was really trying to think of something I couldn't remember, and I was like, is this it?
Yeah, exactly. You start getting really paranoid.
I was like, is this it? But you have got to laugh.
It's not all hereditary either, so
no.
not all dementias are. So yeah, no. I'll keep that.
It's not. And you know what? Reading books is really, really good. Food is very important. Reading, and also what I've also learned as well is not telling them that it's not what it is. So, like, if you say, "Oh, you know," you see something that's blue and you go, "Oh," and they say that's red, and you just agreeing with them actually just helps, because if you disagree, what I found is that they panic. And straight away they go, well, what have I done wrong? And so, but agreeing with them allows them to relax a bit. And I've got a really funny story before I move over to Claire. When my dad was, suffering from dementia, I used to take a lot of music to Cameroon. I would take a lot of music, all the music I used to listen to. I used to love listening to classical music, and I'd get loads of CDs there for him to listen to. And he'd sit there and on his chair at the table, and he'd be listening. And I don't know if you've heard of, is it Rule Britannia, the song and stuff, and and it's singing, and I'm going, Rule Britannia, Britannia rules the world. And he turns around and looks at me like in pure disgust, and he goes, waves. It's the waves, not, it's in the way, like pure disgust. And I went, well, that shut me up. And you could tell the music had relaxed him to the point where he could just be himself again. And that glimpse of him, I'll never forget. Absolutely beautiful. So Claire, tell us, how has that impacted you?
So it's been a funny time for me anyway, because up until 2 years ago, I was running sort of live retreats here at my Dioh in Spain. So women would come from all over the world and spend a week with me doing amazing things with the horses. But I had an injury, a back injury, sort of 2.5 years ago, and I have had 2 microdiscectomies, and I've just had spinal fusion as well 4 months ago. So I've had my own health issues on top of everything else, and that's been really difficult because I am the support system for them, and then I've been out of action. And because I'm an only child as well, my mum was, blessed it, she was running around after me, and I could see it was making her ill, and there was nothing I could do about it. So that was really hard. And so now I've gone sort of to online work. It was something that I was thinking about doing anyway, because I knew this was inevitable, what was going to happen to my mom with her mobility and everything. Having in-person courses here was far too much. We did have things happen where I'd have to take her to hospital and someone would have to take over the class. So it was something I was moving to anyway, to put things in place so that I could be here for them. But yes, like others, I've had to say no to things. I've had to take time off work, and it's just the way it is, isn't it? There's just something, you've just got to hold your hands up to the universe sometimes and just roll with it and try not to get cross, frustrated, and all the things. But for my own mental health at the moment, I've been struggling because of my sort of the physical issues that I have at the moment. I used to run half marathons. I was training for triathlons, riding horses, and that was my therapy. Being active was my therapy. So now I've got to the stage where I'm going swimming. I'm allowed to go swimming again. So the water is my happy place. And we've got a lake down the road, which is lovely. So me and my daughter go there. And it's just to leave the house, because we can leave Dad for a little while. And it just feels like that cloud's lifted. When you're somewhere else, when you're physically somewhere else, you just feel lighter. That burden doesn't feel so heavy. And I think because of what happened to Mum, we didn't know what was going to happen to her. So when Dad got the pancreatitis a few weeks ago, we thought he was just going to drop down dead on us, quite honestly, because the pain was so intense. And so we have very specific trauma to that I just didn't come home with my mom. And is the same thing going to happen again? Because Dad doesn't weigh very much. He doesn't eat very well. He doesn't sleep well, and he's doing all these things. So it's that at the back of my mind. And it's my daughter as well. She's only 16. She's had to deal with a lot. It's like, are we just going to, find him one day? Because obviously he lives with us. And that's that other thing in the back of your mind. One day you're going to find them at home and they've died at home. And that's something that is quite prevalent in our minds at the moment, partly because of what happened to Mom. We didn't even get a few hours in the hospital with her. We had nothing. And so that's a huge thing. But for me, being able to go back to swimming and doing some strength training for my own mental health is really good. And I have a great relationship with my daughter, and my husband's wonderful as well. So we do, you know, as a family, we do stick together, and I have got that support there. But it is, it's been really challenging, especially coming up to Mum's anniversary as well in August. The last 12 months has been particularly difficult. I had my surgery in February, and so for my dad to see me having a major surgery really upset him. So it's been a lot. It's been an awful lot. And then I've just started up my business again because I just had to take time off because of my surgeries and stuff. So yeah, it's been a lot, but I feel like it's sort of coming through the other side a bit, I think now. But still, it's that sort of constant anxiety that something might happen.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's exhausting.
Yeah, and I can feel that through you. And but you know what? I'm so glad that you're working on it, rather than not. Does that make sense and stuff? At least you're not stuck in that space of not knowing what to do. Like, you're making strides to go for it, and I commend you for it. The thing is, when stuff like this happens, there's nothing you can say to anybody to make it feel better. It is literally just a route. But I want to bring it to the conversation, and anybody can just muck in here. Do you think that parents should have that conversation with their children? You know, maybe, I don't know, as soon as you become a teen and start saying, listen, these are the diseases or the illnesses that exist in our family. You know, this is how I not just want to be taken care of, but just giving guidance on preparing you. Because I think for me, I still think I'm 15, if I'm really honest, and stuff like in my head. I don't think I ever grew up. I am literally a version of Peter Pan, which means that in my head, when I look at my parents, I don't see, I never used to. I remember my dad once saying to me, one day I'm not going to be here. And I looked at him like, well, where are you going to go? Like, literally, I remember the conversation vividly. You know, do you think so? Actually, I'm going to go to EJ for this one just to see what EJ says, because I know that she's probably got a thought on this. But after that, please, I'm opening it up to the table.
No conversation is a bad conversation. I know why you're laughing, because again, I have to bring the African spin into this. We do not, we haven't got to a place culturally where we acknowledge that things can go bad. You know, if you start having these conversations, then it's almost like you're bringing it on. So these conversations are avoided to the detriment of everybody, because now we're here and we have no plan. Now we're here, and those things that we thought by not saying them, they will not happen, they are happening. You know, so my mom is very open about, you know, what should happen. Again, I do have to say, in Nigeria, we don't really have care homes like that. You know, we don't have care homes.
It's a new thing, isn't it?
It is a new, culturally, if anybody is ill, your family should look after you. And I'm beginning to think, how are we going to do that? I'm going to have to start looking into dependent visas. And at the moment, we know that, you know, the atmosphere is not very migrant friendly in the UK. It would be an expensive process. So to answer your question, Victoria, should we start having these conversations? Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to be as honest as possible and as quickly as possible, because, you know, like your mom, for instance, Chanel, how quickly that's happened. We're not expecting these things to happen, and we don't know how quickly they can happen. We have a 67-year-old who has, you know, advanced dementia, and we have a 92-year-old on the slow burn sort of thing. So as soon as possible, I think we should have these conversations, honestly, practically, and whilst they've still got it. Because the problem may not even be dementia. It could be more of a physical thing, you know. Do they need wheelchairs? Those kind of, making the house that they live in more accessible, all that kind of stuff. I know sometimes it's a financial thing, sometimes it's too much of an emotional burden to carry, but I think your future self will thank you for putting more plans in place sooner rather than later.
And on that note, one of the care homes that I looked at, which was more like more an institution. They want you to sign, you've got to give a living will. Do they want a DNR, do not resuscitate, like all these kind of things, so hard for you to say. And when someone's got dementia already, they can't make that decision, and you cannot make that decision for them either, because if you don't have like a curatorship over the person, you can't make any of those decisions. And something that people don't realize is power of attorney. So when you have power of attorney, it's different in different countries. So I believe in the UK, if you have power of attorney over your parents, that continues. In South Africa, and I don't know if it's like that in Nigeria and maybe in some other African countries, as soon as they get that when they're non-compos mentis anymore, that falls away. So it's illegal to have power of attorney over somebody with dementia, because power of attorney is supposed to be where you know what the person's doing on your behalf for your bank accounts and your whatever it is. So here, as soon as you have the dementia or any kind of mental incapacitation thing, it falls away, which I didn't know. I thought power of attorney would be something you would have over somebody. I never had it. My mom's husband has it. But whoever has that, you need to know the law in your country, because you may think you can still go and do their bank accounts and all that, but you actually can't, or sell their car on their behalf and that. So there's like legal implications as well to know about. And we also have, we need to have private healthcare here, and it's quite expensive. So, in some way, we are in a fortunate position because her husband is paying for the medical aid, and there's a life annuity policy that's paying for the care, because it's expensive. So it's also something to think about, us having our own businesses. What sort of policies do we have in place? Because I think sometimes when you have a job, it's more structured and you might have those policies, but do we have life insurance? Do we have, all of these different policies, and what's going to happen later? I think as business owners, we've got to also look at that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. Is the who has something to say? Naomi, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say I absolutely echo everything that you've said there. And my dad is from the silent generation post-war. That man would avoid every single uncomfortable conversation that there would ever be in the world. Like everything in our family, we just brushed it all under the carpet for decades. And I think sometimes it takes one courageous person to break the cycle, to have the deeply uncomfortable conversation with a parent. And 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I had the conversations of power of attorney, and I took responsibility for that. I had the conversations of what do you want to happen later on in life, and put that in place. What do you want from a point of view of a funeral? All those different things. Would I have had those conversations 5-10 years ago? No, I'd have run for the hills to avoid anything around death or anything like that. But what I have seen this last couple of years is a lot of my friends at utter crisis point. And unfortunately, a lot of it is because their parents won't have the conversation. But every time my dad closed up, I just went back in. I was like, I'm going to keep tapping on this door. And I think also something I'd like to say is I'm not a parent by choice. One thing that I am going to speak very vocally about is the fact that it is not a given right that a parent should expect a child to take responsibility and do these things, because I have nobody that will do it for me. So if I get early dementia, if I get sick, there will be nobody taking, looking after me and giving all this level of support. I have done it because I want to, and because probably as well that I didn't get to do it for my mum. I was only a teenager when she passed away. But I think that's a really important thing to say. I'm going to say it. I see a lot of very selfish parents out there who are expecting a duty, a loyalty. And I don't think that's a given right, that every child, whether you're an only child, a default daughter, whatever it might be, one of 6, I don't think it is part and parcel that it is our load to take on. So yeah, that's kind of my feelings behind it. And I know that won't sit well with a lot of people, but that is my viewpoint on it.
Who else wants to say anything? I agree. I completely agree. Who wants to say anything?
I agree, and it's also I've gone through feeling angry at my mom for leaving me with my dad because he doesn't cook. He doesn't know how to do things because they come from they're in their late 70s. So that generation where the woman did everything for the man. So just like, how do I use the washing machine? What do I do with this piece of salmon? We need to go to this and we need to do the banking. And it is literally that. It's just like, oh my God. And I've just felt so, because obviously her room's just downstairs. I just go in there sometimes and go, oh, Mom, just like, and it is, but they never had that conversation. Well, what are you going to do if you're left behind? And so it's the conversation between the two people. And maybe it's a role reversal sometimes if the man does all the cooking or, who does just the basics. And can they do that for themselves and be more independent as they get older and as they're on their own? And that's a lot too. He did get a cookbook out and I was like, oh my gosh. And then he left the grill on and burnt the salmon. And I'm just like,
I'm gonna make your dad some salmon and send it over. How's that?
Salmon. It's just those little things. You just think, oh my gosh, like I had to teach him, how to use our cooker, and thank you. He can make a cup of tea. He lives on tea, and he can make a sandwich. But that means, but I'm not taking, like you were saying, I'm not taking the responsibility for cooking for him. He's a grown man. He has to. So his diet is quite limited, and it's not ideal at all. But I just can't do it. I haven't got it in me at the moment. I've got enough going on with my own stuff and supporting my daughter and everything. And then when I do make food, it stays in the fridge.
Rochelle, what have you got to say? You've been quiet.
So I was just going to say quite a few things have come up while we've been having this conversation, but one of them was, my husband, as some of you know, passed away in 2018, just before I turned 30, and he was quite an organised man, so he did have things in quite good order, but I was lucky that I had his brother, who was an accountant, who was there to help me sort through all this stuff, because there's so much of it, and I don't think you realize that all the bank accounts and the and credit cards, and he had a car on finance and returning that, and all I felt like my husband sounds similar to your mum, Claire. It was all of a sudden, we weren't expecting it at all. So I went from one day having a husband to then having to plan a funeral and be a full-time admin person, trying to sort out all these details I'd never done before. And if I'd not had his brother, there was no one else there who could tell me exactly what to do. So I think while we are young and we've got our full capacity and everything, if we can put things in place so that whoever does find themselves responsible for us in a time when either we pass away or we get something like dementia and we can't do it for ourselves, if you can put something into order so those people get it much easier, because my family are similar. We don't have these conversations. We don't talk about what happens. And I mentioned my mum's got my 12-year-old sister. If something, she was in hospital with a gallstones. I was on a hen do in Portugal when she got taken into hospital. My sister was out on a night. My adult sister was out on a night out, and it was the responsibility of my 12-year-old sister to make sure that my mum was getting the care that she needed and ringing the ambulance and everything to get her to hospital. And it's having those conversations that you don't want to have, that you feel really uncomfortable about, and saying, well, what if something does happen? What do we do then? What happens to your house? What happens to even pets? My mum's got a dog and 2 cats, and all these things that would need to be considered. And then the other thing that was coming up for me was with my business. If anything was to happen to me, then what happens to my mum is then left without a job, my sister's left without a job, my partner would be left without much business coming in. So it's something that it does weigh heavily on my shoulders, but probably something that I've not given enough time and attention to, because I'm going to live forever. I don't need to think about these things. But actually, I know from my experience with my husband that life is short and we never know when our time is up. So while we don't want to think about it, we do need to put these plans into place.
See, Rochelle, thanks for that and stuff. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I just think you're amazing at what you do and stuff. Like, do you know what? Sometimes I think that just because you flow through, sometimes that I'm just like, thank God you flow through. Because I think if you had a moment to think what you actually have been through, I don't think you'd move. I really don't. I don't think you'd move at all. Are you going to say something?
I think I was just going to say about how you don't realize how strong you are until you're going through something like what everyone's describing now. Like you just think that or if something like that happened to me, you'd just fall to pieces. But actually, that's when the real strength comes out, and you do get through it. And there's better things at the other side of it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I remember when I brought up the conversation, and I have no idea why I brought it up, because even then I know I wasn't mature enough to have dealt with the truth of the answer if I'd have been answered. But I think I remember asking my parents something like, where do you want to be buried, or what do you want to do? And they both looked at me and went, are you trying to kill us? That was the response. So then we never had another conversation like that either. But also the fact that in the African tradition, so Idris from Nigeria, I'm from Cameroon. Our countries share a border. But it's really funny because a lot of parents have children so that the children look after them. This is to Naomi's point. It's quite interesting. So it's almost like I'm having my children. So my children are my legacy. Yeah. So I'm having my children because my children will look after me in old age. It's not asked. It's expected. But here's the thing, though. I believe that you've got the person who feels guilty of not looking after, and then you've got the person who literally goes, thank God you're there to feel guilty because I ain't doing it and stuff. And they don't even say it. They're just like distant. They're just like really distant. They're that person who, they can't make it. And it's funny because it becomes a pattern where if they don't turn up for anything, nobody even bats an eyelid. If you don't turn up for it, everyone's like, where's Victoria? Where's Victoria? Where is she and stuff? So I think even though in the African culture it's expected, I think nature just makes it out that what Naomi says still stands true, which is you get what you're given. So the children that want to look after you will look after you, and the ones that don't will just make themselves unavailable. I could talk about this topic all day. We've done an hour. People will probably get bored. We are getting some incredible views on this panel, which I'm really enjoying, even though I don't think we've had that many people come on, but it is a nicely gradually watched panel, and I can't wait to hear what people think. But I just want to leave it with this. As someone who does what we call pranic healing, I'm also a healer for my mum and a healer for her friends as well. So being available for that is really useful. And when we study spirituality, what we learn is that looking after your parents is the most spiritual and self-nurturing and karmic deserving thing that could ever possibly come to you. And ladies, it's been a pleasure just to share the stage and listen to how just a fraction of how you look after your parents and deal with what you're going through. And I can tell that we're all going and experiencing a form of grief that we may not even realize that we're experiencing. But to know that your flowers will be dealt with you accordingly. And I know that's not what you do it for, but it's something to just really remember. And for those of you who are listening, please have those honest conversations now before it's too late. Tears are nothing. My grandma used to say, even if you cry, you know, it's not blood that's coming out of your eyes and stuff, it's just water. So if it's only tears, that's okay. The tears will dry up. Have those conversations so that you can get a quality of life. And I think that's all that we aim for in life, is to have a quality of life. Naomi, Chanel, Claire, Rochelle, EJ's had to drop off, but thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And who knows, I may be calling you back for another version of this, and I'll speak to you soon. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Emily.